Welcome to the evening session of the City Council meeting. The meeting is now called to order, and I'd like to ask our City Clerk to call the roll.
Councilmember McClellan is absent. All other council members are present.
Would you then please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remain standing for a brief moment of silence? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, agenda changes. Staff, do you have any agenda changes?
Mr. Mayor, we have no changes to the agenda.
Council members? No. That brings us to public comment. At this time, any person may address a matter within the jurisdiction of the City Council, Housing Authority, successor agency to the El Cajon Redevelopment Agency that is not on the agenda. Comments relating to items on today's agenda are to be taken at the time the item is heard. State law prohibits discussion or action on items not on the agenda. However, council, authority, and agency members may briefly respond to statements or questions, and an item may be placed on a future agenda. Angela, do we have any cards under public comment?
No, sir, no cards.
Okay. We're now at public hearings. Item 100 is regarding the Shadow Mountain Residential Subdivision. Staff, will you please tell us about this?
Yes, Mayor and Council, the city's project manager, planning manager, Melissa Devine, will present the project to the council.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. Today before you is the Shadow Mountain Residential Subdivision Project, as proposed by the Shadow Mountain Community Church, which is represented by Pastor Brian Snow this evening. The proposed project includes a general plan amendment, a zone reclassification, an amendment to the specific plan governing the Shadow Mountain Community Church, and a tentative subdivision map for a common interest subdivision. In accordance with CEQA, a mitigated negative declaration and mitigation monitoring and reporting program were prepared. The site is located on East Madison Avenue, near the intersection of East Madison and Greenfield. The two parcels are non-contiguous or separated by East Madison. The north parcel is 3.5 acres, and the south parcel, outlined both in white, is 4.66 acres. The north parcel is developed with a single-family residence, and the south parcel is vacant. An access easement does run across the north parcel along the eastern boundary and provides access to a property located in unincorporated San Diego County. The north parcel has a gentle slope, slopes upward from the East Madison Avenue, and the south parcel has a knoll, and it slopes from the seminary property to the east towards the Brookhurst subdivision to the west, and also north towards Madison and south towards the parking lot. The general plan designates the north parcel for parochial school and the south parcel for low density residential. This is intended to accommodate approximately 0 to 3 dwelling units per acre. The properties are zoned RS20, which is a single-family residential zone, which plans for one dwelling unit on a minimum 20,000 square foot lot. The property to the south is also located in the hillside overlay zone, which is intended to conserve the aesthetic qualities of hillsides and minimize any landform hazards due to grading. The two properties are surrounded by lower density residential uses, as you can see in the exhibit here. The predominant zoning east of Granite Hills Drive is RS20, although there is some RS14 zoning at the intersection there. And this is characterized by larger residential lots with a more suburban pattern of development. The project request includes a general plan amendment from the parochial school designation on the north parcel to the low density residential land use designation. This is consistent with the surrounding land use in the neighborhood. There's also a zone reclassification from the existing RS20 zone to the RS14 zone, which is a single family residential zone, minimum 14,000 square foot lot sizes. and the hillside overlay zone is proposed to be retained on the south parcel. The proposed RS14 zone is compatible with the low density residential land use designation. The development standards are identical in both zones, the primary difference being about 6,000 square feet of lot area, which is usually accommodated in rear yards. Another part of the proposal is the amendment to the specific plan governing the Shadow Mountain campus. As you can see here in the exhibit on the left is the existing Shadow Mountain master plan, which shows the two properties in question labeled there as the North campus, which was intended to accommodate an elementary school, and a portion of the West campus, which is shown as planned for 6 single-family detached residences. The exhibit to the right shows the proposed removal of both of those properties from the campus master plan. All of the activities of the church and school can be accommodated on the existing facilities. These were intended more to be ancillary uses for the campus. The project has been designed as a common interest subdivision. The primary difference between a common interest subdivision and a standard subdivision is the provision of private streets in lieu of public streets. We recently, within the last few years, have adopted a new common interest subdivision ordinance, which does allow for this type of subdivision. We've seen with more infill projects the need to conserve land area that's dedicated to things like access. And when you have private streets, you reduce ongoing costs and maintenance for the city and allow for developers to have a little more flexibility with how they design their subdivisions, essentially. So here we have private streets and common facilities. The common facilities would include stormwater basins, landscape areas, sidewalks, as well as the streets. And we'll be requiring the establishment of a homeowners association. This homeowners association will maintain all of that common infrastructure. And CC&Rs will ensure compliance with all of the requirements, the codes, covenants, and restrictions governing the property. The applicant has also provided some architectural concepts to illustrate the quality of development that they're proposing. And so we have incorporated within the conditions of approval the requirement that the future development comply with these concepts. And then lastly, I'll note, because this is not a planned unit development or a planned residential development, we have structured the approvals so that the conditions of approval are required prior to final map, because we don't have an ongoing entitlement like a PUD or PRD to ensure compliance with those conditions of approval. We're verifying that they have been completed, items like a sewer study prior to final map. This exhibit shows the north parcel of the proposed tentative subdivision map. There is an existing single-family residence on lot 11, which you'll see in the corner. There are 9 lots proposed on this north side, and the lots do range in size from about 10,800 square feet to 17,582 square feet. Through the lot averaging provisions in our municipal code, you are able to vary the size of the lots as long as a minimum of half of those lots meet the requirement for lot size. So all of the average lot size in this side of the subdivision is 14,266 square feet, and only 3 of the lots are less than the minimum 14. The private street, as you'll see here, is aligned with that access easement, providing access to the property owners in the county that have the benefit of that easement. And there is a bioretention basin located on an HOA lot. There is balanced cut and fill proposed, and the lots do step down from the northeast corner to the southwest corner. The south parcel would contain 10 residential lots with an average lot size of 14,122 square feet. All of the lots on the south side do meet the minimum 14,000 square foot lot size requirement. There are 2 bioretention basins proposed to provide for the capture and treatment of stormwater. And the private street is located along the western side of the subdivision to provide a buffer to the Brookhurst subdivision to the west. And there will be a masonry wall that is constructed along the perimeter of the subdivision, with the exception of the steep hillside area adjacent to the seminary property. That will provide privacy for both property owners on the proposed subdivision, the existing neighbors. A balanced cut and fill is also proposed on this side of the subdivision. Because this property is in the hillside overlay, it must comply with the development standards that limit grading. The conceptual grading plan shows that they're using slopes, small retaining walls, and they're stepping pads as well as stepping within the pads to better match the existing topography. 2 representative architectural concepts have been provided. The first is a Spanish style, and here you'll see depicted a 1- and 2-story concept with concrete tile roofs, stucco finishes, and these are accented with tile, wood detail, and trim. The second is a craftsman-inspired concept with similar accents like stone veneer, wood trim, and shutters. A mitigated negative declaration was prepared in compliance with the California Environmental Quality Act, which indicated that there were potential impacts that could be mitigated to a level of less than significance. There are mitigation measures included and made as conditions of approval for the preparation of a construction noise plan, a traffic control plan during construction, a nesting bird survey if there are any mature trees removed during that season, as well as Native and American and archaeological monitoring during grading excavation. In response to the initial notice of application we sent out the project in 2017, we have received a number of emails and phone calls and correspondence regarding the project. The issues most commonly cited were those regarding lack of compatibility of the proposed land use and zoning with the surrounding neighborhood, the aesthetics of these larger homes on smaller lots, traffic and parking concerns, stormwater issues, as well as concerns regarding privacy, views, and property values. The applicant has also conducted outreach with the neighbors. They have sent some letters and held a community meeting in January of 2018. Since that time, the applicant has worked with staff to revise the project. One of the most notable changes was the original request was for the RS9, so 9,000 square foot lot zoning, and a low-density residential land use designation. That was changed to the low-density residential land use designation, consistent with the surrounding neighborhood, and the RS14 zone, which is consistent with that land use designation. Other changes include relocating that private street on the north parcel, adding a masonry boundary wall, and building a new brow ditch adjacent to the Brookhurst subdivision. On September 3rd, the Planning Commission did hold a public hearing for the project and did receive public testimony, including comments from adjacent neighbors and property owners. The Planning Commission was not able to make a recommendation to the City Council. They were essentially split 2-2, with 2 of the commissioners in favor and 2 opposed to the land use and zoning changes. And so in accordance with the municipal code, the project was forwarded to the City Council. Staff's recommendation is that City Council approves the project, the future development of these sites, consistent with surrounding residential neighborhood, will provide much-needed housing opportunities in the city. In order to do so, we do recommend that you adopt the next resolutions in order, approving the mitigated negative declaration, the general plan amendment, and introduce the next ordinances approving the zone reclassification specific plan amendment, and then move to adopt the next resolution approving the tentative subdivision map. Thank you.
Thanks. Nice report. Let me see if the council has some questions for you. Council? Steve?
Hi, Melissa. I read in the background of this something about a restriction by Dr. Otto Reese placed on the sale of the land. What can you tell me about that?
We don't have any knowledge regarding any restrictions on the property that would pertain to this project.
Anything recorded, anything filed with the city that you found, or?
Nothing to my knowledge.
Okay.
I have a question. Any traffic studies done?
There was a traffic analysis that was done, and so there was a recommendation to include stop signs at the entrance of each side of the private street, which are included.
And I think you mentioned parking concerns. Is there not enough parking in the subdivision?
Parking will be provided in 2-car garages that will be required for each future home, as well as in driveways and along the private street, one side of the private street on the south side.
And any kind of parks or communal land like that?
There's no active recreation. There's landscape areas, including those bioretention basins.
No pools, community pools, or?
No.
Okay. Gary?
What is the square footage of the neighborhood to the west, the square footage range for the houses?
It has an RS 20 zoning, so half acre, approximately.
Well, I'm talking about the square footage of the house itself.
Oh, the individual houses? I do not have that information.
Okay. I'll maybe ask some of the people in the audience a little bit later on that. It's important to me that everything is compatible, that they're somewhat similar. And then will we have a say on whether they can be single story or 2-story? Or is that we're going to do that? We would have to do that later if we approve it tonight.
So the zoning code does permit for 2-story residences, and so there isn't a restriction proposed, but the applicant has said they're willing to consider that.
And is that something we could do tonight?
We could include that within the conditions of approval for the CCNRs.
Right, thank you.
Steve?
Tony, let's go back to the specific plan slide, one of the earlier maps. Yes, that one, thank you. On the left-hand side is the current specific plan 523 as it is today,
That's correct.
and the right-hand slide is the proposed under this application?
That's correct.
Okay, so the left-hand slide, I see 6 homes there. Do you see what I'm talking about?
Yes.
In that current plan, those 6 homes appear to be up against the boundary of the project. They look different than the proposed locations of the homes, which I believe would be across a street and not up against the boundary. In other words, I'll say these 6 homes almost share a backyard with the Brookhurst neighbors. Would I be thinking that under the specific plan?
That's correct.
Okay. And under the proposed plan, the applicant is saying they would buffer that with a street?
Yes.
So there's a relocation of the homes to the other side of the street. I just want to understand my bearings here.
Yes, they've essentially flipped it so that the street is along.
Okay, I just
the
want to
western side.
understand, are we still up against the boundary of the project, or we're away? The proposed is away from the boundary. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Questions? Gary?
Is the wall west of the street?
Yes.
How high of a wall would that be?
It would be a 6-foot decorative masonry wall.
And any plants on the side of the wall?
Excuse me?
Any plants or shrubs on the side of the wall, so they're just not looking at a masonry wall?
So the typical landscaping you would find in backyard areas would be what you would expect. And then on the proposed subdivision side, there would be required landscaping where there is no sidewalk. So in the parkway area in between the 2 bioretention basins.
So then if people driving down the road, there wouldn't be headlights going to people's backyards and windows?
There would not.
All right, thank you.
Steve?
The south parcel, which we're looking at now, that is the slope is coming down from the seminary, I'll call it, down towards Brookhurst. So currently, the specific plan allows for a 2-story dormitory, I believe. If you want to go back to I see 3 dormitories there. Those could be 2-story dormitories, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Where I'm going is I'm concerned anytime something's built and you look down into a neighbor's yard. So the current plan is they could sell this property and somebody to another institution who could build dormitories, and all of a sudden the Brookhurst people have a 2-story building looking down in their yard. So the current plan, specific plan, entitles that already, doesn't it?
It does.
Okay. So we could say, you know what, because you're already on an elevation, to limit you looking down into the Brookhurst lots, we're going to restrict that development to 1 story. Is that an option that we have?
Yes, it is.
Okay. All right, thanks.
But we're not approving a final plan. I mean, another developer will come back to us eventually and ask us for permission. Do I have that right?
After approval, potential approval of a tentative subdivision map, the project would go to final map, and after that, only a building permit would be required to develop on each lot.
All right. Steve?
Got another one. Mm-hmm. So you made an earlier comment that often the difference between an RS-20 lot and an RS-14 lot is about 6,000 square feet of backyard. That implies that the frontage or the width of the property is close to the same, that the difference is in the depth. What can you tell me about the current lots in the neighborhood, the frontage size versus the proposed lots? In other words, I'm saying if the current width is 200 feet wide under most of the neighborhood, and this one is proposed at 150 foot wide or 100 foot wide, do you have any sense of those numbers?
So if we could bring up potentially the municipal code, we can look at the lot dimension requirements together. I think what's notable is that the setbacks, the height limit, the lot coverage requirement, all the development standards are the same in the RS-20 and the RS-14. So if you're going along a street developed with RS-20 or RS-14, the appearance at the street level would be relatively similar. They both have a 20-foot front yard setback. So I think those features will be very similar. And then if we go to the residential standards in Chapter 1740.
So, for instance, you have to have a RS-20 and RS-14 both have to have a 20-foot front yard setback.
Correct.
And they both have to have so many feet between houses or to the side of the property or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, if we can actually go to the lot requirements in the residential in Section 60, just up there. Okay, so you'll see the first column there, not the first one actually, the second column, you're going to see lot, that should be, if you scroll up just a moment there. You scroll up, there we go. So you'll see lot width in the RS-20 zone is 100 feet, where it's 90 feet in the RS-14 zone, so approximate difference of 10 feet. The lot depth is the same, 90 feet.
So that's the requirements, but what if Brookhurst is developed to 150 feet? They exceed the minimum. Do you have a sense of what the proposed lots width are? Did the architectural drawings show what the width of these lots are?
The tentative subdivision map shows the width. Joel, I don't know if you have the 90, yeah. Typical 90-foot width is proposed in the subdivision.
And do you know how that compares to the width of the current neighborhoods?
I do not.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. More questions from the council? All right. I think we'll let you go. Thank you. We may call you back. I'm going to open the public hearing and ask Angela if we have any speaker cards tonight.
Yes, sir. We have 9 speakers. The first one is Brian Snow.
Pastor Snow, welcome.
Good evening. Thank you. I'm Brian Snow. I'm the executive pastor at Shadow Mountain Community Church. I'd like to thank you for hearing our proposal tonight. We have developed this neighborhood in an attempt to maximize both the value of the property for the church and hopefully create a neighborhood that would be good for both the existing residents and the soon-to-be residents of the neighborhood. We started off with quarter-acre lots, got a lot of feedback from the neighbors that was not good. I worked with the city to create a product that would be both beneficial for both users. So we're proud of this plan, and I'm here to answer any questions.
See if there are some questions here for you.
Sure.
Steve?
Tony, can you bring up maybe not this subdivision map, but maybe a aerial map of the south parcel? Like a Google Earth map with the boundary on it or something like that. That'll work. There's another map that has the outline of the parcels overlaid on that map. Maybe it was one of your first slides. There we go. Okay. Hi, Brian.
Hey, sir.
So one of my questions is, why didn't you increase the lot size on the south parcel deeper up towards the Seminary Hill to make those half-acre lots?
I'm going to have to defer that to Joel, the engineer, because I don't know why.
Okay.
That's certainly
Okay.
a great question.
I saw in 2017 you had an initial outreach on the project.
Yes, sir.
I read in the background that 17 neighbors filed filed responses, 13 filed objections.
Okay.
And then you went back to the neighborhood in 2019. I believe you issued a notice in January 2019 saying, we've got a new plan. We're going to go from 23 to less than that. But I didn't see anything about how many neighbors responded with comment. The same 17, more or less? What?
We didn't have another public meeting for that, and I'm not sure. I think most of the comments were directed to the city, not to the church. I can tell you that the public meeting that we did have was quite contentious, and frankly, it did not feel like it would be productive to have a second one after the first one.
Okay. Probably one of the big questions is, why not make these half-acre lots?
Sure. Feedback that we've gotten from developers in the region is that half-acre lots are not as marketable, and they're not as in demand as small lots. So we frankly wanted to maximize the value of the property for the church. We're going to sell this, so we wanted to increase the value of that while still maintaining. We're selling it and staying, so we certainly wanted this to be nice for us as well, because I'm sure that plenty of people who buy in this new neighborhood will be interested in seeing the neighborhood stay in the great condition that it's currently in, and we are as well.
Okay. On the north parcel, it's currently zoned to be a parochial school.
Yes, sir.
If this isn't approved, is one of your options to sell that parcel to a charter school or another church?
Absolutely.
Who could indeed already just build a school there because it's entitled that way?
Absolutely.
So that,
we could build a school, or we could sell it to someone who could build a school. It just, for our current needs, we felt like this would be a better solution, but that's absolutely what our plan would be if this doesn't pass.
Okay. Okay, that's all for now. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Did we want to get the engineer to come up and finish answering the question about going into the side of the hill? Steve, did you want to? Hi, how are you?
Good. My name is Joel Meyer. I'm with Polaris Development Consultants. I'm the civil engineer in the project. I'm also a member at Shadow Mountain Community Church. I have a little presentation I'd like to give, but if you want me to answer your questions first, I can do that, or whichever you prefer.
Well, why don't we go ahead and tackle that one question that Steve had of
Okay.
why not dig further into the side of the hill?
Kind of two reasons. One, that it is a hill. The further back you go, the more grading you're doing, the more disturbances you're going to have. We probably wouldn't be able to adhere to the grading requirements as far as height limits of fill slopes and retaining walls. So that was a big consideration. The second one is that the lot size, the RS-14, is already existing in that neighborhood. It's compatible with the general plan. There's 8 lots right down the street that are RS-14. So we had the option of doing one or the other in that general plan designation. We're choosing RS-14. Brookhurst chose RS-20. So that's their reason.
I appreciate that.
Yep.
So, just so I understand, you just didn't deepen the lot back, and it's just because you wanted RS-14 and this is the boundary that you wanted. I hear what you're saying, grading, but could you have left the lot at its natural slope, and the owner would just have a hillside behind them on their lot?
Yeah, that isn't very marketable, though. You just basically have some unusable space, and they're not going to climb up the slope to go on this area that they're not really going to maintain, and it's just going to end up being an eyesore just to get extra square footage. And as Brian mentioned, most of the two builders I spoke with, they're not really interested in getting half-acre lots. There's a half-acre subdivision right down the street across from Grand Hills High School that got approved in 2004. It's still sitting there. There's one home finished on it. There's a few others that are being built, but largely it's undeveloped. So why would the builder want to come in and put more half-acre lots there when there's some that aren't even selling?
Okay, all right.
All right, thanks. Now, you have a presentation?
Yes. Yeah, thank you. I was just going to give some of the history as far as where we started and kind of why we ended up where we are now, which a little bit of that was already shared, but the project kind of got started with a national builder came in and decided they want to try and develop these properties. They had their engineer design some 9,000 square foot lots. We're going to go forward with that. Then kind of at the last minute, they decided to pull out. They weren't having good success with some of their Southern California subdivisions. They decided to pull out of this. That's when I got involved. The church asked me if I would help them look at the entitlements. And so we stuck with that 9,000 square foot plan. We talked with the city. They seemed supportive of that at the time, as long as we provided good architecture and a real high quality project. So that was kind of our first design, was going with that 9,000 square foot lot design. We submitted that to the city. We got some feedback from them that they didn't feel like that was something they were going to be able to support. We got feedback from the neighbors as well. One of the neighbors to the north said that he didn't like that we were relocating his easement going to his property on the county, in the county area there. So we redesigned the northerly subdivision so that we wouldn't have to relocate that easement. On the south side, some of the neighbors weren't happy that there were homes proposed right against the westerly property line. They were going to be looming over them, looking down on their subdivision. So we moved the street to the west side, moved the homes to the east side. So that was another accommodation we made. There was also issues with the brow ditch and the existing fence on the south side along the westerly property line. So that's another concession that was made, was that we will be putting in a new boundary wall, also putting in a new brow ditch. So in effect, the homeowners are getting a little bit of area back. They can remove that brow ditch if they like. They could remove their fence if they like, and they have a little bit more space if they would choose to do anything with it. But the wall and the ditch will be maintained by the church now, so another added benefit. But the biggest change was that we went from the 9,000 square foot lots to the 14s. And again, we researched it. We saw that there were 14s in the area. The RS-14 subdivision on the corner of Granite Hills and Madison, it actually has 3 lots that are 9,000 square feet. They're 9,200. The average for those 8 lots is about 12,000 square foot. So we're doing 14s. So it feels like it's a good mix in there. We don't have the smallest lots. We don't have the biggest lots. But we felt that it was a good compromise in there. So we have submitted the 14s, and that's kind of where we're at with that now. A few of the other benefits of the project would be we're widening Madison Avenue. It gets a little tight going through there now, especially when Granite Hills High School gets out in the afternoons. You can only get one car going north there. We're going to be widening the street. They'll be able to get 2 cars through there. It should alleviate some of the congestion. Also, we'll be finishing the sidewalk on the south side of the street so that you can get from the west side of the subdivision all the way up to Greenfield, walking on a sidewalk. You don't have to walk on the street or walk on the dirt any longer. And I was just going to answer the question about the Brookhurst lots. I looked that up just a minute ago. On the adjacent to our project, the Brookhurst lots typically are 100 feet to 135 feet, with an average about 100, 120 feet. Our lots on the south side of the subdivision average 110 feet. So it's a little bit smaller, but by 10 feet it isn't a whole lot. So they're fairly compatible. The last thing I was going to say, if I could have just one more minute here, was that the projects have been reviewed by the city planning department, the fire department, the engineering department. They're all in favor of this. We think that what we are proposing is compatible with the existing neighborhood. It meets the general plan. We're not asking for anything other than what the general plan is allowing us to propose. And again, there's homes in the area, lots in the area that are the similar size, and there's some that are larger, there's some that are smaller. We think we were a good fit right in the middle there. And I'm available for any questions if you have anything.
Thank you very much. Let me see if there's any questions, Steve.
I seem to have the questions tonight. The brow ditch, just so we're all on the same page, what's a brow ditch for and what is it?
So there's an existing ditch along on the picture there. It's kind of on the very south boundary that is picking up it's a concrete kind of U-shaped ditch that's picking up the runoff from the church property. Right now that is actually on the Brookhurst side of the property line, and there's a fence on the east side of that. Or maybe it is on the west side. Either way, that's going to be removed. Right now, it should be the responsibility of the Brookhurst people to be maintaining that. I know there's been some issues about if the church is going to maintain that, and I did see some sort of document that said the church is going to maintain it in some areas or not. But with this subdivision, it is going to be, the ditch will be on the development side of the property, and that'll be up to the HOA to make sure that that's maintained.
So currently, the brow ditch sits on Brookhurst property, subdivision property. Is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Some of it does, and some of it is
My
on...
records show it's all on, at least the majority. Maybe
Okay.
at the very south end, it might be different, but the majority of it is on the Brookhurst property.
And the proposal seeks to move that brow ditch onto the application's property to be maintained by the proposed new HOA?
Correct.
So do the Brookhurst residents have more land because there's no longer a brow ditch on their property as you described?
Well, the brow ditch on their side would still be there unless they choose to remove that. But yeah, there is some open space there that they can utilize if they choose to, because they won't
Okay.
need the ditch on their property any longer.
And because you're building a masonry wall, you said they could remove their fences if they want to, and then the masonry wall becomes their new back fence? Is that what you're saying?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. I just want to understand these differences between the two properties.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the council? Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. All right.
The next speaker is Angela Abbott.
Hello, welcome.
Hello. Yes, I'm Angela Abbott. I live at 2120.
Angela, would you mind pulling that down a little bit?
Okay. Angela Abbott, 2120 Brookhurst Drive, since 1990, 29 years on Brookhurst. And has anyone ever driven down our street?
Yeah.
It's pretty nice. It's very nice. I think it's one of the most elegant streets in all of El Cajon. My house is 150 frontage by about 125 deep. I think that's close. I have 20,000 square feet, obviously. So it's very large. I, of course, objected. I've met with Brian a few times and told him how much I've objected to this. The 9,000 square feet lot was absolutely out. And when I saw the 14,000, I felt a little better. And I thought, well, they're trying, they're compromising. But I still, when I really think about what's going to happen and the way the houses look, and if they're going to be 90 square feet, lots, those houses are going to be scrunched in together. And the word aesthetics, I know the lady that was talking first, I'm sorry, I don't know who that was that presented the project. Who was, I didn't get her name. Is that Melissa? Oh, it's Melissa, okay. Yeah, I've talked to Melissa many times. I just don't believe the aesthetics of that neighborhood will anywhere compare to what our street and our neighborhoods look like. It can't compare. They'll try. And I have to say, on the zoning map, it's interesting that they talk about the RS 14 lots. There's 7 of them. They probably have been there. Those houses were there long before Brookhurst was even developed, I believe. And if you look at those houses on those RS 14 lots, they just do not compare to our street. I mean, when I picture those, I picture not something that I would like to look at every day. I just don't understand. I know Mike Spilger couldn't be here tonight, and he wrote a long letter. I hope you read it. He's very strongly opposed to this project. He really feels that he doesn't see the compelling reason to do this. It's obviously about money. I hate to be snotty about it, but it's about a little bit about greed. I know the church needs the money. They want to make the most money they can. I mean, we can't really fight. I try to understand that, but at the same time, it's at the expense of the neighborhood that we've lived in for actually since the 80s. It was originally across the street. I'm on Brookhurst on the newer side, and then in the 80s, Weir, W-E-H-R, was the developer of all those lots back then. And I know there's nothing in writing from Otto, the guy that originally owned the Sacred Heart Church there, but I think it was an understanding that he wanted this area east of Granite Hills Drive and all of Shadow Mountain. You're not going to find any lots, as far as I can tell from looking at the zoning map, which I keep looking at every day. I didn't find any lots less than 20,000 square feet, all up Shadow Mountain. So I don't see the necessity to compromise those aesthetics for the sake of Shadow Mountain Church. I know it's harsh, but I just don't agree with it. I just don't think it's the right thing to do for our neighborhood, and I think our values may be diminished. I can't say for sure. Traffic will be an issue. It's just, I just don't see the necessity. We agreed to 6 houses back in 2004, and I was at every meeting that we went to, and that was the compromise they made with us, that they would we agreed to give them a parking lot, which is right up against the homes at the end of Brookhurst.
Can I interrupt you for a second?
Oh.
One of my jobs is to watch the clock, and
I know, I'm out of time.
I was so
probably.
busy listening to
I
you.
could go on and on. I know.
I forgot the clock. So if you want to finish it up, good. I appreciate it.
Well, of course I oppose it. I would like to see, with the square footage on the south parcel of 4.66 acres, 9 houses would be better. Let's give up, make them, I think, how do you figure it out? I can't figure it out. So it's almost 5 acres, so it actually adds up to 10, but that doesn't seem right. Why are the lots only 14,000 square feet? Where's the other acreage? If they're saying it's 4.66 acres, that's what you were asking. Why aren't they just making them bigger lots,
We'll delve into that, and I appreciate it. Thanks for your time.
All right, thank you.
I have a couple questions, Bill.
Oh, ma'am, Steve has a question for you. Sorry.
I'd like to understand more about your point of view, and these questions are probably for any speaker. You said this project would come at the expense of the neighborhood. What do you mean by that?
I feel that we're all really proud of our neighborhood, and you make that turn onto Brookhurst Drive, and you just feel like you're in another world. It's just such a beautiful street. And I feel that, we're going to see houses scrunched together, looking down on us. My thoughts for those houses when they originally in 2004 was to make them custom lots and sell the lots and let people build custom homes, beautiful homes, $1 million homes. Our homes are close to $1 million on that street. So certainly, I don't know what the price of these homes are going to be. And my home is 3,500 square feet. And I know you were asking a question about every house is probably about 3,000 or larger on that street. And I just can't see them squeezing in that much square footage on a very narrow lot. And it's just not going to have the look that we have. It's just not. And I don't understand the necessity of it in that area. I just don't believe that it needs to be done in that area.
Okay, and you mentioned you thought your property value will take a hit. Why do you believe that?
Well, because they're probably going to sell, I don't know, 600,000 to 700,000, maybe. I don't know. Smaller houses.
How does that negatively affect? To help me understand how your property is.
The comps will be right there when you try to sell your home. As you know, they're going to make a circle and see what's sold in the neighborhood, and they're going to say, well, this house with this many square feet and this many bedrooms and bathrooms sold for this. Why do you think yours is worth any more than that? The comps are going to be lower. There's no question about that.
If they're different size, a half-acre lot versus a third-acre lot, are you saying they're comparable and so it's dragging down your value?
Well, I would believe they would. I just don't think that's going to add any value to our neighborhood.
You mentioned you thought traffic might be an issue.
Yes.
Help me understand, since they have their own private street, which doesn't.
No, well, coming in and out onto Madison. So this is the first I heard that you're going to widen Madison into like 4 lanes, or you said you're going to add a lane. I was a little confused on that. I never heard them say anything about widening Madison.
That's okay.
Tony, was that a requirement?
It's condition of approval from our Public Works Department.
So it would be like a 4-lane?
2 lanes each way.
2 lanes
curb, gutter,
each
and
way?
sidewalk on each side.
Does that help alleviate your traffic
Well, it
concerns?
should alleviate traffic. It should, but but the whole idea of where we live is definitely a rural feel. You know, we feel that we have a rural feel. We don't have obviously low density is exactly what it is, and we would like to keep it that way. But I just feel that the church should stick to their original plan of half-acre lots.
All right, thank you.
That's all.
I just have a quick question. I don't mean to put you on the spot, but if you own that land,
Yes.
and you could sell houses and give money to your kids, and would you want to do that, or would you want to leave it untouched because of the?
No, I don't. I understand progress has to be made, and if I owned that land, I would, and if I had to live there too, I would say subdivide it into lots, and I mean they are view lots. I think that as a custom home, that they would sell better than a kind of a semi-track that we're going to be getting. But, and someone would love to build a beautiful view custom home up on that hill. I mean, I think the lots could sell for $300,000 or $400,000, just the lot. I mean, it would save a lot of aggravation and just subdivide it and sell the lots.
Okay, I just was curious. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I've got a question for you too, man. Sorry, I keep letting you go.
You seem very knowledgeable on the subject, so I appreciate that. And thank you for the information about the 3,000 square foot home, 3,000 square feet and above. Mm-hmm. If we turn this down tonight and they decide to sell the property for someone to build dorms, how do you feel about that?
Well, that isn't part of the master plan, right? That area was designated as residential in the master plan on that where it says west there. So technically, because we agreed to let them build that parking lot and having parking lot lights shining into our neighborhoods and doors slamming, and the church is a busy place. The offset to giving them that parking lot at that time was we don't want a parking lot up against us. We don't want the dorms up against us. We don't want the school up against us. We want residences there. And that was the compromise at the time.
Okay, don't go yet because I have a question for staff. I'm not trying to work you over here, okay?
That's okay.
I'm just trying to get to the information.
I'm fine. I've been around a long time with it.
Staff, can the applicant build the dorms by right? If they wanted to build dorms?
According to the specific plans you see there on the left image, where there's three rectangle shapes. Those are three two-story dorms that were approved in 2004 as part of the master plan. So all that the Shadow Mountain would have to do would have to come in and obtain building permits.
Oh, so they could build by right, but they just had to build it according to building code.
That's correct.
Okay.
But not, yeah.
And I know you had some questions about, an appraisal. Let's say if you're trying to refinance or something, if interest rates keep going down, for those of you who don't know, I've been a real estate appraiser for 36 years. I got a master's degree in real estate and been an investor for 40 years, and I taught real estate appraisal at Southwestern College for 10 years. So I have some knowledge about that. And usually what the appraiser does is they take a look at the square footage of the comp, and in this case, if it's a little bit smaller than yours, let's say 500 square feet, they make an adjustment. They add 500 square feet to the sale price of the smaller home to come up with a value for your home. And actually, because over the last 20 years, because of the increase in water, I found very little difference between the value of a third acre and a half an acre, because a lot of people don't want to spend the extra water.
Right, that's true. I agree
for
with that.
So as far as value goes, that doesn't make a whole lot of difference. But what's important is how the house looks when you drive by.
Right.
And I've been in your neighborhood. In fact, I think I did appraisals. I think they built in 85 or so, 85 or 86.
Yes, the first side.
And now, my recollections, are those custom homes or not? I think they were. Some had models and some were custom. Is that how it worked out?
A lot of spec builders came in and built a few here and there. But every house, some of the houses on the first in the 80s, the first development of homes in the 80s, some of them are the same. So there were some specifics.
Okay,
but
and no sidewalks, right?
No sidewalks. Okay. But on the side where I live on the newer side, built in the 90s, 86. Oh, actually, so it was the early 80s across the street that was developed, and then mine started 86 to the mid 90s, and there isn't any houses that are the same there.
Okay.
They're all different, but they're very similar, very custom.
Okay, thank you very much. You've been very helpful.
Thanks.
Angela, sorry, I'm not done. Not done. Come on back. Come on back.
Okay.
I saw your name quite a bit in the background material, so you have been involved in this. I want to give you a chance to have every response that you can have possible to these things. Now, let's take a look at the north parcel for a second. You live on the south side, but let's look at those people who are across the street from you.
Yeah.
And if the project isn't approved, I guess I don't know if there's anybody here who lives in the north parcel. My question is,
there isn't it? Oh, there.
Okay, I will want to know how you feel about a school being there instead of housing, because anybody can build a school there. It's already zoned for school. So when it's your turn to speak, or if you'd like to speak, I'd like to know your opinion on that, because they could sell this property to Literacy First or Foothills or any other organization who can, by right, build a private school there. And I want to know what that does to your thinking when it's their turn. If you want to speak, I'd like to know your opinion. The last thing I have for you is you said the house is scrunched together. I want to know if you have a different opinion than Mr. Waymeyer, who said he believes the average width of the Brookhurst lots is 120 feet frontage, and that his average width is 110 feet. Do you agree or disagree with his opinion?
The Waymeyer's lot, I believe, is about 3/4 of an acre. That is one of the largest lots.
My question is,
he's kind of in a little bit of the cul-de-sac?
Not his lot.
Oh, not his lot.
My questions earlier was, how does the proposed project's frontage differ than all the other homes in the neighborhood?
Well, by about 20, 25 feet.
So your opinion's about 25 feet?
Yeah, because I know mine is, I wish I knew exactly, about 120. Okay. And they're saying 90, so that's 30. I have a little bit of, the lots vary in the width, I have to say.
He said an average of 10 feet difference. I just want to know if you agree or disagree.
I think it's more than 10 feet.
More than 10 feet.
I think we'll have to go measuring all the frontages tomorrow, because I never really thought about it that much.
That's okay. I was trying to get context when you said the houses are scrunched together.
Well, and what is the amount of space between each house? I don't think I got an answer to that for this development. How much between where they're going to build, the easement,
Let me.
wall to wall, this house to this house.
So the question is, in the new development, how much space on average between the housing?
It's really not really listed on here yet, I don't think. They're just, there's no diagrams of where the houses will sit, but how close they will be to each other.
So they would have to meet the, if approved the RS-14, they'd have to meet the RS-14 setback requirements. So the RS setback requirements are 20 in the front, same as Brookhurst.
Yeah.
10 and 12 and 6 on the sides.
What does 10, 12, and 6
But what that means is on one side it has to be 12, the other side 6. So eventually, in some cases, there could be up to 18 feet between houses.
Okay.
So 18 feet.
Do you think that differs than the Brookhurst?
Anybody? Yes. Yeah, I would say substantially different.
Just trying to understand your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
Okay.
It's different, yeah.
I've got one final question, not just because you're so knowledgeable. I'm not picking on you here. Can you see the parking lot from your house?
Not from my house. I cannot. It's the Waymeyers. It's behind the Waymeyers house. It's behind the, what's your last name? My brain is not Warren. The Warren house and the Collender house. Miss Lois Collender still lives there. She's still up against the parking lot.
When the wall goes up, it's further back. That's going to change the angle a little bit more.
I doubt if there. I believe, isn't there already a wall there? There's no wall?
Our fence is 6 foot, so it's not going to be any different than
the fence. Yeah, they can see the parking lot from their house. They can see the lighting and all that. So I don't believe that they will change that wall. Isn't it already there, a wall? Yeah, that wall's already there. Nothing will change on that end at the end of the cul-de-sac.
Okay. Well, thank you for your patience with all the questions.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I've got a question for Tony. Bill?
Yeah, go ahead.
The current boundary fence of the Brookhurst Estates on the east side, their backyard fence, is the new masonry wall at a higher elevation, or is it at the same elevation? In other words, what I'm saying is if the new masonry fence is built on a little bit of a slope, and that's a 6-foot fence, in essence, you get like a 10-foot barrier. Do you see what I'm saying?
Understood. I believe the masonry wall is on the same grade, because that's the same side as where they're putting the private street, so there's some grading going on there.
Okay.
So it's the same height. But I would like to clarify your question earlier, your comment earlier about setbacks. If you look at the monitor, you can see the setbacks in the residential zone. The RS-20 and the RS-14 zone have identical setbacks. So the front and the sides and the rear are all the same.
So you say it's a moot point. They would be the same kind of setbacks whether or not we went with the larger zoning or not.
That's correct.
Well, those are the minimums. I mean, what is actually out there could be different than this.
That's correct. They don't have to. They could build to a greater setback if they wish.
But the minimum is
identical to the RS-14. The RS-14 and RS-20 are identical. That's correct.
Okay.
Next speaker is Carl Kalick.
Hi, Carl. Welcome.
Hello.
Go ahead.
My name is Carl Kalick. I am a vintner, a brewer. I make cheese. I keep honeybees. And I have a farm at my home, my 1-acre home. My family moved to Granite Hills because of the zoning law and the personal freedoms and safety it provides. When the church brought this to the neighbors to ask our feedback, There was not a single person in attendance that spoke up that supported their plan. A few people asked to compromise and to keep Granite Hills area half-acre lots. Shadow Mountain, against community wishes, brought this to the city planners, and once again, neighbors showed up and asked to please keep the lots the legal half-acre size. Now they bring this forward to the city council for approval, and I'm here to ask again for democracy to prevail and for a local church to work with the community instead of fighting it. Some of these lots don't even meet the minimum requirements to be RS-14, with 10,000, 12,000, and 13,000 square foot lots. They're trying to fudge the law and use technicality to average lot sizes. These new subdivisions are not compatible with any neighboring property, especially the 4 1+ acre lots on the north side that these properties will touch. Spot zoning these lots will provide unjustified special treatment that benefits Shadow Mountain Church while undermining the pre-existing rights and uses of adjacent property owners. Not only that, but these lots here set a precedence for all other lots in the area owned by Shadow Mountain or other large developers. There's a 9.5 acre lot on Greenfield as well, pretty close by. If we give in to increasing the density now, we are giving the church the knowledge and power that they don't have to listen to the community and can continue increasing density in our rural neighborhood against the current long-term city planning objectives. And then I had not heard about any of the road widening before I wrote this out, but at its current state with the two weirdly opposite roads that do not connect, like you couldn't put a 4-way stop there because they're crooked, right? I thought that was poorly planned and potentially dangerous. The lopsided streets placed along the small curvy section of Madison should be further scrutinized and tested. When that section of Madison becomes gridlocked by freshly licensed high schoolers 5 days a week, the confusing layout may cause dangerous situation that the city may have to address with costly road improvements.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions, council, Steve?
You mentioned a Greenfield 9.5 acre parcel that you fear is this sets a precedent for. Do you know if that 9.5 acre parcel is in the city of El Cajon?
Currently, it is in county. It's unincorporated.
So it couldn't be a precedent because the county couldn't look at El Cajon zoning to zone a county?
Okay.
I don't think they could.
Unincorporated could never become incorporated?
I don't think the incorporated would take a look at El Cajon's zoning decisions to say we're going to zone. I think they would make their own decisions.
Okay.
We would have to annex the property to do that.
So I don't think we have jurisdiction, or I don't know that this could be a precedent for their 9.5 acre property.
Until it becomes incorporated if ever.
If we ever annex it. You mentioned you live on the north parcel?
Yes.
So if the project is not approved and they sell it and becomes a school, how do you feel about that versus housing?
So I would prefer housing. I would prefer a few half-acre properties. I'm not sure that a school would ever be built there. There's lots of schools in the area. There's a high school, there's an elementary school, a middle school, there's an adult school on Madison, there's a few churches. This was set out to become an elementary school for Shadow Mountain.
And if they decided to sell the property because they can't use it at elementary school, but another organization like Foothills or Literacy First or a preschool operator wants to come in and operate a private preschool, how do you feel about a school's activities versus housing?
It would depend on the type of school, but I would be more inclined to have a few houses there.
Okay, thank you.
Just one. If you would stick around for a sec, go ahead.
Oh, just as an aside, I'm the guy that made the beekeeping legal, so I'm glad to hear that you've got bees. I think that's a great thing.
Well, that's an interesting point because I remember when the beekeeping issue came up, and there was a lot of people in the community that did not want wild Africanized honeybees killing their children, and it gets kind of, when people get impassioned, they start throwing around all kinds of ideas about how horrible it's going to be. And I remember that we said, look, people have a right to do what they want on their own property as long as it's legal, ethical, and moral. And I didn't find anything illegal or unethical or immoral about keeping bees or making cheese, or some people want to have a goat, and it's a property rights thing, and that's, eventually we're going to get down to talking about that, and I get the concern that people would like it to be the way they want it to be, but also in America, people have a right to do with their property what they want to do with their property. So it's a different point. I appreciate you listening. Thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate it. Staff, just real quick, before he leaves, he had mentioned that some of the lots were not compliant with the RS-14 zoning, and that the explanation was that over the average it did work out. But are there some lots in that are not compliant?
We're talking about the proposed subdivision or an existing subdivision?
The proposed subdivision.
So the proposed subdivision takes advantage of what the municipal code offers, which is lot averaging. As long as the average of all the lots meets the minimum lot size, some are going to be more, some are going to be less. Melissa had indicated that the average of all the lots exceed 14,000 square feet. The other stipulation is that at least half of the lots are above 14,000 square feet.
Okay. And does any of this classify as spot zoning?
The zoning is consistent with the general plan. The general plan had indicated that under the LLR designation, there could be anywhere between 0 and 3 dwelling units per acre, and the RS-14 fits that category.
All right, I appreciate it. Sir, thank you very much for coming.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Maureen Shin.
Hello, Ms. Shin. How are you?
I'm well, Mayor Wells. How are you?
Great.
I am Maureen Shin, and I'd like to preface the fact that I actually don't live in the city of El Cajon. I actually live next to the parcel he was referring to, the 9.5 acres on Greenfield. I own my childhood home that my parents built in 1977. So to say that I'm deeply rooted in that area is very important to me. However, I'm also a very deeply rooted person in the city of El Cajon. I sit on the board of directors for the Chamber of Commerce, which I'd like to state for the record, I am not here in that capacity. I just like to state that I have a vested interest in the community, and I work in El Cajon. So I'd like to preface my statements with that. I just found out about this last night, and that's concerning to me, considering yes, I don't live in the city of El Cajon, and my home doesn't directly abut to this property that they're referring to. However, I do find it a precursor to what will happen with that property on 9.5 acres. And we can what if it all tonight and say it's never going to happen. But it certainly is a potential argument that Shadow Mountain Church could have that property annexed into the city of El Cajon for future sites. So I'd like to state that that's a lot of my capacity this evening. In reference to the appraisals, Councilmember Kendrick, I'm in lending, so I'm very familiar with appraisals, not to your degree by any means, but there is a line item on an appraisal that says, does the house conform to the generally conform to the neighborhood? And I would say that I do not think that this development actually conforms to the neighborhood. This is a very, like she had mentioned, it's almost a part rural community on half-acre lots, and I think that if you're going to build a community to be aesthetically conforming to the area, I would say that you would probably need to have half-acre lots. I am pro-building, I am pro-growth, but I'm pro-appropriate building and pro-appropriate growth, and I don't see that this development conforms to that area. I would think that that would conform more to the Home Depot site, where you have easy ingress and egress and access to the freeway on main thoroughfares. This, to me, seems very congested, and I think that it would affect property values, and I think people would have, a case to make. And again, back to the fact that I just learned about this last night, I'm speaking on very limited information, so I apologize to say that, but I would love to have a secondary meeting. I'm sorry that it got contentious, but I think that more of the neighbors should know. And I live on a street that has 8 homes on that street. 3 of those 8 neighbors are here tonight. So clearly it's important to the surrounding neighborhoods, not just the ones that abut to the property itself.
Questions?
This is a question for city staff. The 9.5 acres that I hear about, is that adjacent to city limits, or are there other lots in between the 9.5 acres? And
There are other properties between the city and the 9-acre lot in the county.
If we're talking about annexing that 9.5 acre lot, it's got to be a whole other lots before that up to the city limits.
Other lots would have to be included.
But it is owned by Shadow Mountain Church, right?
All the other lots in between the 9.5 acres and the city limits?
No, that particular lot.
I don't know. I've just heard that it is.
Right. And so if we're talking about the ability to sell a property however way you see fit, that property could be put up for however they see fit.
Yeah, we're talking about, would this decision be a precedent for Greenfield's assumedly owned 9.5 acres being zoned the same way? And we said, well, we'd have to annex it to the city. But I'm hearing, but there's a whole other bunch of parcels in between that have to go with it. So I'm trying to understand the context of this precedent.
I guess my thought process would be, if they're willing to do it at this level, what's to stop them from trying to do it at a different level at a different time?
I understand. Regarding the contact with the community, I read in the backup that Shadow Mountain held a couple community meetings and reached out to 118 homes. So they went beyond the 300-foot statutory limit and were quite inclusive. They may not have reached as far as you. Do you think that was a good faith effort?
I don't think there was any malice behind it. I just think that it would have been more prudent to include the neighborhood as a whole, because I think that there's a vested interest in the community as a whole.
Okay.
And if we're going to be fair, I do get advertisements from Shadow Mountain Church, so I would think that they'd want to reach out to, more. And if they went beyond the 300 feet, that's great. But I think it would be nice to have a more broad approach to this project.
Okay. Finally, you mentioned the old Home Depot lot, which is called Main Ranch.
Right.
Saying you felt this project was similar to the aesthetics or feel. Tony, what is the zoning designation for the Main Ranch for context?
Well, the zoning is the zoning is actually commercial with a specific plan on it that allows for residential. That residential development on 14 acres is 139 units, so about 10 units an acre.
10 units. So that's like an RS4?
That's
RS6?
Less than your typical single-family neighborhood.
I'm just trying to understand the size of the Home Depot lot versus this lot.
The Home Depot lot is 14 acres. So it's about 140 homes.
So if each lot, if it was zoned not as a specific plan for a 14-acre lot, but it was an RS something, what would be close to that?
Let me do a quick calculation.
Carry the 2, divide by the tire size of an average car or something.
So it's about 4,300 square feet. So
and
one unit per 4,300 square feet. So
and there are 43,000 square feet at an acre.
That's correct.
So this would be an RS.
Well, it wouldn't qualify as any single-family zone. It would be more in the
smaller than an RS6.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so I'm trying to get the context of
right.
This numbers.
And if you would look at those homes in comparison to the surrounding homes of that area, would you think, Mr. Shute, that they were more comparable to those houses versus the comparability of these homes to the Brookhurst residences?
I think it's hard for him to get involved in
I don't even know if it's appropriate. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean to add that.
A subjective claim like that, I think they'll leave that to us. But I understand your point. What in your mind, what would be a reasonable thing? Because if you own the property, you'd probably want to develop it, right?
Right, and I think that it's reasonable to. I think half-acre lots would be reasonable, and I think, as I said earlier, you could what you could do with the property all day long. You can sell it to whoever you want, but at the end of the day, it's currently zoned R20, right?
I know. I think it's actually. Oh, it can go up to 20. Yeah, and how low can it go down to?
The current zoning of the south parcel where this part of the map is proposed is RS20. So that's the same zoning as the Brooker subdivision to the west.
But they're not, I'm getting confused, but at one point, the plan was to have more houses, I think 21 or 22 houses, and then went down to 19?
Well, that was part of Shadow Mountain's original proposal to have 23 proposed homes under an RS9 zone, and they've taken feedback back from the neighborhood as well as staff to propose the RS14 zone and bring the number of lots down to 19. On the Brooker side, you see 10 instead of originally approved under the master plan as 6. And then on 9 on the north parcel where the parochial school or the elementary school would be located.
Now, the general plan for low density residential is 0 to 3 units per acre.
That's correct.
So that could be zoned, I understand it's currently zoned to RS20, but allowable under the current general plan with anything from an RS14 up to an RS40.
That's correct.
Okay. Any other questions for Ms. Shin here?
Thanks, Mo.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for coming.
Next speaker is Al Meyer.
Hey, Ms. Meyer, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Doing good.
Well, I didn't prepare a speech, so I'm doing it off the seat of my pants. But I believe that in anything like this, you follow the money. And it's to the benefit of the church to build these homes, and as many as they can, to get the highest bang for the buck. But I think I'm into compromise. I think there's 3 things they could do to compromise. One is they could cut the density down on the south side by 2 houses at least, okay? 2, they could put up no 2-story homes, make them all single-story, so that you don't have the look-over problem. And 3, instead of having the track exit and enter from Madison, they could bring it around to Greenfield and go out on Greenfield that has less traffic, except for the high traffic during church. Other than that, it'd be less traffic and a much easier exit. So those are the 3 things I think that can be done and can compromise, add more square footage to each property, and still be a good housing project.
All right, Steve.
Mr. Meyer, do you feel this project would negatively affect your property value?
I think so in the long run. If we were going to sell our house, if we had 2 stories looking down on the homes below, yeah, I think that would negatively impact us.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Ms. Meyer. Mr. Meyer, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
I really like what you said about the 2-story homes. I think that might be a point of compromise later. But do you feel that the moving from 23 houses originally, which they probably could have been approved for, to 19 is a show of good faith and compromise already, or do you think that's not?
I think it's a move in the right direction, but if they could take another 2 out, that'd be great. If you think about flipping that around the other way, it might be way better. And maybe they would have more because it's flatter on the other side. Maybe they'd have more room for a few, staying with 19. I don't know. But the traffic situation is going to be horrible. And the school you mentioned about the school, if they built a school there's already 4 schools in the area within not even a mile.
I got to tell you, I was at the opening of a new charter school last night, and they were asking me, do you know anywhere we can build a large school? So believe me, there's people that want to build, there's money in charter schools these days.
Yeah, but that's your job to not let high-density traffic exist. It already does exist there. So I don't see how you could approve a school.
Well, what I'm trying to say is that these places are zoned for certain things, and we are entering into a phase in California history where we may not even have the ability to stop building. There are proposals right now in the state legislature that says that if you want to build a low-income apartment complex, 3 to 6 stories tall, that you can do it anywhere you want as long as the California State Office agrees to it. It takes it completely out of the hands of the city. So if it were me, I'd want to build on those lots something before the state of California starts coming into it.
I'm not at all against having houses there. I'm not at all.
Okay,
the size could be better, and if you look at the topography of the land, I think they'd do better if it was flipped around and the exit was on Greenfield.
I don't know if that's possible from an engineering standpoint about the Greenfield. Tony, you want to weigh in on that, or is that too complicated to?
Well, I think it'd be better if the applicant to comment on that, but I think they already have significant significant improvements on the Greenfield side of the college.
Well, they were able to build the parking lot. You know.
Well, I appreciate. They're here. They're saying thank you. You got lots of good ideas, and I appreciate it.
You know, Bill, there was a comment about how we could approve a school. If it's already zoned for a school, somebody is already entitled to build a school there, aren't they? We don't have a say.
That's correct. The council already approved this in 2004.
Somebody already said there could be a school there. So we would have to change the zoning to prohibit a school being there.
It's an interesting thought process, but it's not on the table now, so we'll just move.
Graham, could we check the AC, please?
Yes.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, you make a good point, because everything I've been reading about what the state is doing is to take the ability of local city councils to turn down projects because they want to build a whole bunch of low-income housing all over California. So sometimes it's better to know what you're getting than have something. Let's face it, I wouldn't want low-income housing to be built on my street.
Okay, everybody doing okay? You need a break, or you want to keep moving through? All right, next
speaker.
Next eyewitness here.
Next speaker is Michael Mitchell.
Hi, Mr. Mitchell. Welcome.
Good evening. Michael Mitchell, 2182 Brookhurst Drive, and I'm here to let you know that not everybody is against this project. Our family, and there's a number of other families on the street on Brookhurst that actually are for the project and do totally believe in it. There have been a couple things that actually I just want to address. Literally the last person who just talked about a compromise. Well, the first thing is the church has already made the compromise because the new project, the new things that they're talking about them being not low density, but low density, okay, which actually meets his requirement. I don't know if you heard it earlier. Joel said earlier, yes, we would be very amenable to when the houses were on the other side of the street, looking at them all being one story. That's the compromise. Based on what they've done before, they're coming back. I honestly believe they're trying to do everything in their power to make this as amenable as possible to the neighborhood. And I think it is a good project for everything. Reality is, I own a school. We teach insurance, real estate, securities. Reality is, you're going to put new housing that's going to meet a third acre to a half acre things. The house values are going to go up. This is California. They're going to be brand new houses around the block from you. Your house prices are going up. That's a fact. That's not speculation. That's not a guess. That's reality. That's what's going to happen. Let's talk another thing, a little bit about reality. The average person, if you go down the street right now, how many people in this can drive by in front of a lot and tell you whether that is a third acre lot or a half acre lot? Reality is, you can't. You don't know the difference between 100-foot frontage and 110-foot frontage. People are saying this because it all sounds, it's the panic. It's the panic something new is going to happen. And they don't want new. They don't like change. Okay, I get that. It's human nature to not like change. But this is reality. It is a business decision. Okay? Yes, the church is going to try to get as much out of it as they possibly can. The reality is, like you said earlier, it's better to see the problem that you may have coming. It's better to know what's coming than the potential of what's not coming. What you're talking about low-income housing, that area right there would be a prime. People are going to come in there and stack up those 6-story apartment buildings like that, and that would just be absolutely horrible, and I would definitely not like to see that. So, thank you.
Any questions? Do you have questions? Thanks, sir. We appreciate it. Listen, folks, we're going to take a 5-minute break, and we're going to try to keep it right to 5 minutes, and we'll come back and continue with this, okay? Thanks. Hi. Ladies and gentlemen, I think we'll continue. He's coming. There he is. Angela? Might call the next speaker, please.
Yes, sir. We have 2 more speakers. The next one is Al Masters.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Al Masters.
We're going to go ahead and continue the meeting now. Is Mr. Masters here to speak? Hi, Mr. Masters. How are you? Good. Thanks for coming.
We live on Brookhurst Drive, and I don't have any sophisticated comments to make, just 3 very simple, little, broad, general points, of which have been partially addressed this evening. No one really knows what the impact of a decrease in lot size, no one really knows what impact that will have on the value of our home. You can debate it, whatever, but no one really knows. I myself am counting on that home to fund a significant part of our assisted living and or long-term care when the time comes. So, I can't tell you that the home would be worth less. I can't tell you that it would be worth more. It's been suggested it's going to be worth a lot. Well, that remains to be seen. The issue of congestion has been addressed somewhat. Coming up Madison Avenue at 8 o'clock in the morning to Greenfield and out to the freeway, good luck. It's been said, I believe if I heard right, that 2 lanes are going to be added to Madison Avenue. I wonder if they're going to be on the ground or up in the air someplace, because I don't see how Madison Avenue can take 2 more lanes. Anyways, my concern is increased in congestion because of additional population in that area. And last but not least, some time ago, I think it was 2004, we weren't living there. I think we moved in sometime after that. That property was rezoned to half-acre lots. The parties involved made a deal. They made an agreement. I kind of think the parties should adhere to their agreement and maintain the existing zoning as it now is. Please don't ask me any questions because I won't be able to answer. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Our last speaker is Wes Warren.
Well, Mr. Warren, welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Good.
I'm not opposed as much as I am concerned about the view. We've got a beautiful view. The original, when I bought the home, I bought it 5 years ago, I knew that it was disclosed that they could be putting 6 homes back there. And I was in agreement, okay, 6 homes. And one of the things that I appreciate that Shadow Mountain is saying that they're going to do is they're going to build a wall. I'm one of the few neighbors, the one right next to me. I'm down in the corner of the site on the south side, but you know, there's the parking lot. I can see the parking lot. I can see the wall. My neighbor that has the wall right behind it, they did a great job as far as putting the wall there, putting up some palm trees there and stuff. I'm just concerned about the view. If I've got homes that are going to be looking down at me, it's just not acceptable. If they build, I've got a lot of property on the other side of my fence that I had to allow for the drainage ditch or whatever. They say they're going to take care of that. I could care less about that property because I have a fence now. But if they're going to build the wall and they're going to make it where the other homes can't be looking into mine, I would be in agreement. So that I'm just hoping that they will still reconsider the number of homes, because right now there's going to be 2 homes behind me.
Sir, you mentioned the view and and other houses looking down into your property. If the Shadow Mountain people were in agreement to make the houses all one story, would that be a compromise that you could live with?
That would be fine with me, as long as the elevation is such where they're not right there behind me. I don't know how they're going to do the grading and stuff back there. They're going to have to be very creative.
Well, I'll have to talk to the engineer. I don't know the answer to that question, but at least we have some room to work with now.
But I'm all in favor of the wall. Build the wall. Any questions?
No, that's good. I know some other people who agree with you on that one.
You're going to be on the front page of the newspaper tomorrow morning now.
All right, so is that the end of...
No more speakers.
No more speakers. Well, then I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
All right. Council, we can discuss it. At some point, I'd like to ask the applicants to come back up, and I've got a couple of questions for them, but did you have anything you wanted to discuss before we did that?
Why don't you have your applicants come up and we'll all hear it before the discussion?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Let's start with the gentleman who's the engineer.
Bill, I also have a comment. I think out of fairness, if we give the applicant one last chance to speak to what they've heard, we should let anybody who has a different opinion to have, so both sides have an equal chance.
I agree with that. We're not form over function here. If somebody has something to say, as long as we can keep order, then I have no problem with
we might want to limit that to one representative for the people who have a different point of view. That's up to you.
Let's see how big it gets. I don't. If we get back, if everybody wants to do their thing again, I have to do something before tomorrow morning. But if a couple of you want to get up and speak, that's fine.
Do we need to reopen the public hearing?
If we would have to reopen the public hearing if we did that. But for right now, we can call the applicant back up. Actually. Pastor Stowe.
I guess I'll make a motion to reopen the public hearing at this point so that everything that they say is part of the public hearing.
Oh, okay. Is that the best thing? All right. Then I second that motion. Let's vote on that. All this formality. Okay.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
It might just make most sense to have Mr. Snow and, sir, I forget your name, sir. Might make sense to have you both come up and can answer. So one of the things discussed was houses that can look down from where they're going to be built into other people's property. We're talking about one-story houses and two-story houses. Do you have any thoughts on that? And I'm sure the engineer would be able to tell us more about that.
Yes, we actually did prepare cross sections of pretty much every Brookhurst property that intersects with the Southerly property. That one right there is actually shown on the tentative map. Tony, do you also have the cross sections that we submitted individually for each home? Okay. That one is kind of a general case. As you can see at the far right side, the Brookhurst homes are down lower, anywhere from 5 to 15 feet below. So they have slopes. There's somewhat of a setback between the rear of their house and the property line. Then we have about a 10-foot area that's wall, brow ditch landscaping. You have a 30-foot wide street. You have another, I think it's 4 feet on the other side. You go up a slope for a front setback. So you have a good probably 50 feet between the proposed wall and where a new home would go. So it's a pretty generous setback already, the 50 feet, not to mention that the Brookhurst homes are probably anywhere from 20 to 50 feet on the other side. So you could have anywhere between 70 and 100 feet between these homes. And then with the difference in elevation, with the wall, there probably aren't a lot of instances where someone would be able to stand on their lot and look down into the Brookhurst lot. Now, maybe if they got on the roof, it might be a different story.
And speaking of that, Pastor Snow, could I ask you a question? One of the compromises suggested by several people, I'm sure you heard, was the possibility of not having some two-story houses, but having them all be one-story homes. Do you have any thoughts on that?
We would be open to that on the side where the view is an issue. On the north side, that's not an issue. It's a flat parcel, relatively flat parcel, and there are no privacy concerns there. But on the south side, we would be willing to agree to that in exchange for the higher density.
Any other questions?
Could you further block the view with trees and other kind of? Is there enough room between the masonry wall that you could put trees there to?
I'm hearing some questions behind me. Just for clarity,
well, we need to keep order, so I'll bring people back from the public.
Just to clarify the last thing I said in exchange for the higher density. I'm saying in exchange for what we're proposing tonight.
Right, I understand. You're not
even more.
You're not asking to go back
That's
to
right.
the 23 because that would make me crazy if you do that tonight.
Yeah.
So, all right, good.
So I don't know if my question is
additional landscaping.
Yes, could that be used to block views?
There is room for trees. Yes, sir.
Well, there's a way that we could.
Yeah, I think that would
architecturally increase the height of the wall without making it concrete. You can make it foliage.
And Mr. Goebel, would you not agree that would only be required in the specific situation where that would be a problem?
Well, I think we're trying to address the concern that you don't want somebody looking down at
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to give you all a chance to talk. If you could just maintain for just a moment, we'll get to you.
I'm trying to address the concern about looking down into somebody's existing backyard. And certainly we've seen this kind of thing here, and reducing it from 2 stories to 1 story seems another idea. I'm just trying to put all the options on the table, and maybe there are trees between houses or a backyard and a house which could provide an additional layer of visual blockage. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And I was just saying, I would suggest that we only require that when it was obviously that was a problem, because he said that there would be very few lots where you could actually see into somebody else's house without standing on the roof.
Yeah, I think you're right. We would require that when we know that it could potentially be an issue.
Okay. Phil, any questions? Gary, any questions?
No.
Gentlemen, thank you very much. All right, so the public hearing is back open. Does anybody like to come up and speak to what we were just talking about? Sir, go ahead.
There was no mention before of on the west where they built the parking lot, the wall that they put in there. I mean, that was very, it made it very private for the owners that were living back behind there, and I don't know how high that wall is. Do you know how high that wall is?
Tony, do you know how high that wall is?
It's likely no higher than 6 feet.
Yeah, it's generally 6 feet is what we require in these instances. So it would be similar to the one that they're proposing on your property.
That wall is considerably higher from my perspective, from my property. So, and I am right adjacent to it. So, and they put up nice palm trees to make it, and it's colored and stuff to go across. I think there wouldn't be any kind of a problem if something like that is put up. It wouldn't hurt the view of the people looking towards us, nor us towards them.
I commend you on your ability to compromise. Thank you. Anybody? Yes, sir. Come on in.
I'm glad my suggestion hit a ring about single-story homes there. I think that's a great idea. The other one you didn't talk about is flipping it and having, because the traffic density you're going to add to Madison is going to be huge. amount.
You're right. We didn't ask them about that. I could do that if you.
You know,
if you'd
because
like.
maybe they could even get back to 20 houses if they have more area to work with there. Maybe. I don't know. But that's a thought.
Let me ask specifically about the
if it's possible
about the egress onto the other street. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. Could somebody come up and address that question, please?
Yeah, hi again. Right now, our legal access is out onto Madison, so I think that's why that was chosen as the access point for the subdivision. It makes more sense to go out that direction. And we originally, someone did mention earlier about having the two streets align with each other. We did have that originally, but that's when I had said that the neighbor that owned that easement to the north didn't like that his easement was being relocated. That's when we shifted that intersection, so it was an offset intersection now. So that's kind of why that ended up the way it is. But there's been a lot of discussion about the traffic and the congestion. There was a traffic study done. The traffic study analyzed the existing traffic concerns out there now, plus what they would be like with the proposed project there. And they ended up, and I wrote this down, a summary of what they said is that analysis of the project impacts found that the project does not create any significant impacts on the roadways and intersections analyzed. So I believe staff has that same traffic study, and you could ask them as well their feelings on how the traffic study was performed.
I appreciate that. We've done this a few times, and this is an issue that often comes up, and people feel like it's going to be a big problem until after it's built. And we've learned to rely upon the traffic studies, that they're usually pretty accurate as to what happens. So, all right, thank you, sir.
Sure.
Yes, sir, come on up. Hi, what's your name?
Hello, Steven Saldivar.
Saldivar, go ahead.
I live on 1884 East Madison.
Thank you.
Can you bring up the map that shows the two different, like the Google map? So I live right where the upper arrow is.
Okay.
Okay, that's my property. So it runs almost half of that white line that runs there. So my property is going to have a 6-foot wall ran all the way down it. I have an acre there. My biggest concern right now is, so if you look from Granite Hills down to that arrow, almost all the water from all the homes run right in onto that easement. Now, I don't know about grading, if they're going to lift it or lower it, but a lot of water runs through my property, runs down that easement, and ends up at where the new road's going to be. My biggest concern is that once that wall's up, I know there's a brow ditch breakaway. I don't know if it's in my property or on the other side. My whole yard is going to be flooded.
Let's check on that, because I know that they've looked into that. Tony, you want to address that?
Well, I'm going to have to defer to the project civil and staff that's familiar with that.
Fine.
The drainage.
The other concern is, I know there's sidewalks coming in, and a lot of the water comes across Greenfield or around Greenfield onto Madison. And the curb ends on my easement. My easement is, east of the proposed new road. That water just trickles across the yard in front of me and then runs all the way through. Like, it just kind of floods all into there. So those are all my big concerns about the logistics of we start lifting everything up.
Mostly about flooding on your property.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's ask the civil engineer about that, and we'll go from there.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
All right, thank you. Is it possible to bring up sheet 3 of the tentative map in the upper left-hand corner of that cross-section?
Well, as part of the presentation, the PowerPoint here, we only have, from the tentative map, the proposed lots and the one cross-section.
Okay. You can kind of see it there just in the upper left corner, but there is proposed a project boundary wall along the property line with a brow ditch on the project side. There will be openings in the wall that will allow the runoff to get into that brow ditch, though. The other option is to put the brow ditch on the other side, but then that property owner would have to maintain that. So typically we put the brow ditch on the project side. The HOA will maintain that. We could have openings in the wall. There could be screen coverings to keep animals out and things like that. So, but the runoff is designed to get through the wall into the brow ditch. And then as far as out in the street, we will be putting in new curb and gutter along the project frontage. There will also be drainage improvements. There's going to be a curb inlet right at the intersection of Street A in the lower right corner there and Madison Avenue. That'll be picking up all the runoff coming from Madison as you go up towards Greenfield. So that's all been analyzed in the project drainage study that was reviewed and approved by the engineering department.
How confident are you that your neighbor's yard won't become flooded in a flood situation?
Well, as long as the HOA is maintaining the ditch and the openings of the wall properly, there shouldn't be any issues.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you.
I have a question there.
Yeah.
What if the holes back up from debris in a heavy rainstorm? What's the worst case scenario? Does the water run southerly along the boundary wall? Does it back up onto his yard? What do you think?
Yeah, we'd have some sort of fail-safe in that. We usually add more openings than what are necessary for a 100-year storm, so we'd add extra holes. Plus, there'd be typically at one end or the other, there'd be an opening that the water could get through should everything else be plugged.
So if something's plugged, the water would just go southerly until it finds an open hole. And you're saying worst-case scenario is you've got so many holes built in, they'd all have to be plugged for him to back up into his property. Do you feel confident there's enough holes to avoid that?
Yeah, we designed for a 100-year storm, and then we add extra, so it's...
Sounds good.
Yeah, it's good.
Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. Any other questions anybody has or statements they want to make? Yes, sir. Sir, could you? I hate to do this to you, but can you come up? So, because we need to have you on TV to be official.
I was curious, the homeowners association, if that was something that the residents would have to have and run, or if it be something like we have a homeowners association, but it's not active. I was wondering if that association has to be active. The reason being that if the association is active, they provide a level of oversight. If people park their car and drop the transmission out working on it, that would be a no-no. But if it's not a formally organized HOA, then it's a horse of a different color. And I was wondering if the homeowners association has to operate as an homeowners association.
My understanding, sir, is that is exactly what it is. It will be an active homeowners association, and the residents will have no choice but to be part of that.
So then, who will be would the developers be the initial, so to speak?
So the homeowners association hires a management company that manages it for them.
So that's for sure.
Yeah, positive.
That makes a little bit of makes quite a bit of difference in the property being maintained. In a homeowners association, you just can't throw garbage out the window and that type of thing.
That is true.
So, thank you.
Thanks. Okay, Gary.
Just to comment, sir, you made a good point, because the reason I moved to Fletcher Hills from Santee was because someone was throwing garbage out of the window right next to my house, and diapers and things. It was just awful. But my experience has been the homeowners association keeps up values. The guy next door to me 15 years ago painted his house Easter egg blue, and the homeowners association got all over him about it, and they had to paint it like earth tones like everybody else does in my neighborhood. So these homeowners associations do add value and protects the neighborhood and the adjacent neighborhoods.
Okay, anybody else? All right. I'm going to make a motion then to close the public hearing. Move in second. Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
I have one more question for Pastor Snow. If you can come up. Do I have to reopen the public hearing for that? For a question? Yeah, okay, well, make a motion to reopen the public hearing. Anybody second? Second. Okay, please vote. What will it say? All right, we got it.
Motion
Pastor
carries.
Snow. I'm sorry.
Pardon. Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
You mentioned you'd be comfortable with one-story houses on which side?
On the south side, the side that has the hill.
One story only on the south side.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions for the pastor before I really close the public hearing? All right, thanks, sir. I appreciate it. See, that's what I was afraid of. Okay, one more question. Yes, ma'am.
I'm Kathleen Law. I live on the corner of Maplebrook and Brookhurst. And I wanted to clarify, Pastor Snow said that he was agreeable to the one story for greater density. And I'd like to know exactly what he means by that.
No, we already discussed that. What he said was that he was not comfortable in going less than the 19 houses, but he is comfortable with going one story. So he wasn't asking for an increase. He was just saying that he didn't want to negotiate away the density.
And that's 19 houses, counting 10 on the east side.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
So good clarification question. All right, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing for good. Second, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
Well, Council, it's up to us. I think it sounds to me like we've come to some kind of consensus, and I think that part of that consensus would be changing on the south side. The housing can only be one story. Another stipulation would be that if there was instances where a house above another house, a house in the development above Brookhurst could see into that yard, that the applicant would be amenable to planting some trees there to give them some protection from that. And other than that, I think we have a deal. Any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm good with that. I think it's really important we protect our single-family neighborhoods. And the last thing I want to see is something drag on for a couple of years where they end up selling it to a school, and then you have 300 students peering out the window looking in your backyards. And then when I bought my house, unfortunately, in Fletcher Hills, it goes up too, just like Brookhurst does. And I'm on the bottom, and we had a guy just looking over watching the kids in my pool all the time, which I didn't like. So luckily he's gone now. But I think the single story protects that. I think the wall protects that. And I think the trees will protect that. So I think this is a win for everybody. Again, my nightmare is high density, low income housing, in one of the best neighborhoods in town. You're right. It's one of the top 3 neighborhoods in the city of El Cajon. We want to keep it that way.
Any thoughts from the rest of the council? Phil?
Yeah, I sat back and I listened, and it sounds like Shadow Mountain didn't get everything that they wanted, and it sounds like the neighbors and the community didn't get everything that they wanted, and that sounds like my marriage. It's compromise. And there was good back and forth, and I have to really underline what Gary and Bill brought up with regard to the state and the regulations that could potentially come down with their high density requirements. We're always under a lot of pressure. I think capitalizing on a compromise right now is wise for the long term. And I hope moving forward there can be good unity. It sounds like Shadow Mountain's trying to be a good neighbor. It sounds like the Brookhurst crew over there wants it to be a wise decision too, and there's some give and take. So I'm really proud of my community right now. I don't live in Granite Hills. I wish I could live in Granite Hills. I don't have the luxury of having that kind of an income, but it just reinforces that. So thank you.
Well, I asked the most questions, I think, because I really wanted to understand the applicant's point of view. I wanted to understand the resident's point of view. This may seem like a long hearing, but everybody deserves fully to be heard because, as Mr. The last gentleman who spoke, Mr. Masters, this is your exit plan. The value of your home. So I think that's well, I can see it's emotional for you. So I think it's important that we really dig deep into this. I don't think that zoning this to RS-14 sets a dangerous precedent. I think we kind of vetted that. You heard me talk about the width of the lot. That was important to me. I did hear a comment about the houses scrunched. We did talk about the width between the houses, and we kind of had some more understanding there. I think the depth is the difference here in this case between a third acre and a half acre. And you're talking about 6,000 feet on the back. I asked the applicant, why didn't you just extend the lots backwards? And he said, well, actually, it's a hill. And that essentially becomes either a grading issue, which you can't do, or it becomes unusable land. So then they really can't sit, that's almost valueless half-acre land in a sense. And that was a reasonable explanation to me why they can't just go deeper and make them half acres. So the width of the lots, I think, are similar enough. If they're probably the staff thing there is 20 feet long. If that's the average distance between lots, boy, that's pretty darn close when you're looking at it. I don't know that you could tell the difference. The aesthetics, we can require a future builder, because there is no builder on this project, we can require them to make the design compatible with the surrounding neighborhood. They can't build Spanish clay tile roofs when that is not the neighborhood around them. That won't happen with my vote, at least, because that does change the character of the neighborhood. It puts the odd man out, and that does make it weird out there. So we'll address that. I won't vote for something that looks different than what you already have. The church wanting to get more money, I think I just substitute the word any builder. The fact that it happens to be a church is coincidental. I think any builder would say, I want to get the most money that I can economically. I think most builders would say, I need to make this pencil out in today's world of costs. El Cajon is the second lowest building cost among 19 cities. We're proud of that. We want to attract builders building good homes. I think the certainty of having homes instead of what is already entitled to be there, a school, and potentially selling it to another church or organization where there's entitled to be dormitories, 2-story, entitled to be 2 stories looking down in the yard that we couldn't do anything about. Boy, I think the certainty of 1-story homes is good to lock in for you. The traffic study was referenced. Melissa sent a memo to Don Robinson, I don't know if you're here, and Angela on July 23rd of this year. Hi, Don, a traffic analysis was prepared. However, the development does not generate enough daily trips to require a traffic study per the ITE guidelines. We have a study if you want to come and view it. So it's got a separate street, so people driving into Brookhurst aren't affected by the traffic coming in and out of the north and south lots. So I think we're addressing that. We're widening Madison. 2 lanes, I assume, means 1 on each side of the street, not 2 lanes on this side and 2 lanes on this side. So I think that helps with safety issues and site issues. Making it 2 stories down to 1 story, I think, is a great compromise because I have a neighbor that looks down on my backyard. And, we have a pool and we have kids and we've got dogs, and he can, shout at me, I see you cutting wood and what are you working on? Well, I just don't want that kind of relationship with my neighbor. So I'm not going to vote to have somebody do that to you. I think these houses are good for the community. I don't know that I could tell the difference between a half acre and a third acre also. So I think going from lowering the density the fact that they're going to look similar, the aesthetics can be the same, the traffic's not an impact, we've addressed the width of the road, 2-story down to 1, that's probably one of the most important things, that your privacy isn't affected, because I think that would affect the value of your house. I don't know if I would want to buy your house if somebody's looking down in my house. So that's why I talked about trees and things. If that's what it takes to block somebody looking down in your house, that's what's going to happen. So for those reasons, I think we have a win on this project as a compromise between everybody. So I am in favor of the project. I'd like to make a motion to approve the next resolution, approving the mitigated negative declaration and mitigation, monitoring and reporting program, and the general plan amendment.
Second.
If I might interrupt, yes, just to ensure we meet the City Council's expectations, as part of your motion to adopt the next resolution approving the tentative subdivision map, that you limit lots 1 through 10 to 1 story, and to ensure effective screening, that enhanced landscaping with the additional trees be added within the landscape area adjacent to the masonry block wall.
I would include that in my motion.
I'll include that in my second.
Well, I think we're only on the sequel resolution right now, so you might jump the gun. Let's wait for that for the tentative subdivision map motion, okay?
Why don't you give me a high sign when it's time to do that? Because there's, I think, 6 motions here that we have to go through. But if my other colleagues have other comments before we vote, that's
I don't
fine.
think so. I think it's, we've talked it through.
Okay, so I move to adopt the next resolution approving the mitigation negative declaration.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote.
I move to introduce the next ordinances approving the zone reclassification and specific plan amendment.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
I move to adopt the next...
1 second. You moved to the ordinance, so the city clerk needs to read the title of that ordinance.
The general plan that they approved. I thought that was the general plan.
Your motion was for the ordinance, wasn't it, to introduce the ordinance?
I'm reading off the script there.
Thank you. The title is an ordinance rezoning property located on the south and north sides of East Madison Avenue between Greenfield and Granite Hill Drives from the RS-20 single-family residential minimum 20,000 square feet lots to the RS-14 single-family residential minimum 14,000 square feet lots, APNs 508-120-18 and 512-130-35, pending general plan designation low density residential LLR.
Okay, I think that Mr. Schutz's slides kind of melded a couple things together. If you look at your agenda, there are numbered...
I see them.
So what you've done is number 3 and number 5, so if you could get back to number 4.
And does number 4 need to have the qualifications?
No, it'll be number 7.
Number 7. Thanks for the heads up. Okay. So I'm doing number 4. Move to adopt the next resolution order approving the general plan amendment number 2017-03.
Second. Moved and second, please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
I move to introduce the next ordinance in order approving the amendment to specific plan number 523.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present, and with your permission, I'll read the title for that. An ordinance amending specific plan number 523 to remove 2 excess properties located on the south and north sides of East Madison Avenue between Greenfield and Granite Hill Drives from the Shadow Mountain Community Church specific plan.
And finally, I move to adopt the next resolution order approving the tentative subdivision map number 670 with the additional requirements that lots 1 through 10 are limited to a single story, and that where any lot 1 through 10 looks down has a sight line down into an existing backyard on Brookhurst subdivision, that it include additional mitigating factors to include foliage?
Yeah, landscaping, and then to be maintained by the HOA.
Maintained by the HOA. That's my motion.
Second.
Please vote.
Motion carries by unanimous vote of those present.
I think that's all of them.
That's it. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. It was an enjoyable council meeting. I think this is democracy in action. I really am proud of everybody for being so good to each other, and look forward to seeing new houses. This brings us to the adjourned regular joint meeting of the Alcon City Council, Alcon Housing Authority, held this 24th day of September 2019, is adjourned until Tuesday, October 8th, 2019 at 3 o'clock p.m. Thank you very much.